Hi, everybody. Hello, left hand, right hand. Never remember. Good afternoon. Here is Max, Citizen's Duty blog after long pause, and it's Hamburg here. We are going to talk about the topic that we find very interesting and challenging: how to stay sane in this crazy reality we are having now, how to make our opinions and make sure they're adequate. Not as simple as it seems to be. The other day, we had a conversation with some friends here. It was somehow about, what's going on over Ukraine and this confrontation, East and West. You see, I have lots of German friends here, and I'm obviously Russian, so they're curious, what do I think about this and that? And sometimes they may be not curious, but I still attack them with my opinions on things. Right. And the conversation quickly went up on the higher levels because it's totally counterproductive to discuss any one political events uh, as long as your views on certain fundamentals are not synchronized. And most of these conversations lead nowhere, namely because people are entirely differently informed about things, and even some of the fundamental axioms of good and bad surprisingly can be different. Not to mention that nobody these days knows the history at all. And our attention span is typically very short. So we only focused on events that take place this week, but we don't even remember what was last week, not to mention what was a few years ago, what happened a few years ago. So, and with all these problems, we still need to somehow form our opinion on the events because we are, after all, we are citizens. We go to vote for someone, and we are generally trying to be good people. And what does it mean to be a good person? Well, mm, you don't want to hurt others, right? You don't want to bring suffering to the world with your whatever, with that little you do on the social arena, so to speak. Obviously, it's easier to be a good person maybe in your personal life. You have your nice garden, your cat, you love your family, or maybe I had to put it in a different order. But I mean, you're good, but then you go and you vote for someone horrible, for example, who brings war and devastation into another country. Maybe it's also on you. And since I am here in Germany, this land remembers what happened here over like 80, 90 years ago. And uh, in certain ways, nothing fundamentally changed. I mean, we are still the people, we still try to navigate in this complex political landscape. We have to vote once in a while, or we are asked to vote, and people here usually take it very seriously, call it their citizens' duty to express their political opinion. Yeah, but who we vote for, what happens? I mean, we're still supposed to answer the same questions as our grandparents, who, particularly in this country, made once not so graceful choices. And in the end, they suffered from these choices as well as a lot of other countries, all Europe, Russia, yeah, and so on. But again, how? And once we started talking about Ukraine, we quickly stumbled upon the fact that we have these opinions, like my opinion, your opinion, my opinion. So whose opinion is a better opinion? And someone very peaceful in our company said that after all, we can agree to disagree. For example, on certain things, it's totally okay. We just have different opinions. And my message here is that, well, right, people can have any opinions. However, some opinions are more adequate than others. Some opinions are correct and some are wrong. you take a seat in the class and listen to me. I will tell you how things are. That's what I had to tell them, kind of, in a way. And here is another tricky part. Once you start lecturing something on a subject that we discuss and you know more about it, you are can be easily accused of being kind of opinionated person. There is even such a word. You can be accused of climbing some intellectual or moral superiority. This is dangerous because it does happen in reality very often. Yes, people often climb intellectual and moral superiority. I just want you to trust me. I don't do that. I'm totally fine with the fact that I don't know a lot of things as good as other people, and about a lot of things I have totally no clue. On some subjects, I have a much better, more deeper and better formed opinion and understanding, namely because I put more energy into studying these subjects. It's totally normal. I accept it. You also should accept that. So closer and closer to the subject, closer to the subject. So how exactly one opinion is different from another? How do you know? If we talk about politics, these opinions are often made of different materials, so to speak. Imagine you build your house from a straw and I build my house from bricks. So whose house is stronger? I mean, you can have your opinion which material is harder, for example, but it doesn't matter. You are wrong. My stone house is stronger than your straw hut. The first blow will prove it. And I can say that my opinions already have been proved many times. For example, Ukraine 2014, before the first blood was splitted there, before Maidan shootings and all the upgoing events. We had very hot debates with some friends in Ukraine. One guy in particular was a very good musician, a classical pianist, and I particularly have a soft spot for musicians, so I really had huge respect to his musicality and his accomplishments in this area. And he was a very much pro-Maidan, pro-Ukrainian revolution, as they called it, thing. And he pushed for it. He posted like 10 posts an hour on Facebook about this stuff. And at the same time, I would also say, though I don't know him personally very well, but I can easily imagine that he is a decent person. Well, definitely very accomplished person, but also in conventional terms, a good man. No, I don't know him. I had to block him in the end, but I think he is, or yes, he is probably somewhere in another reality now. Anyway, so we had these debates, and I tried to convince them because I could see how the events develop in a very, very, very nasty directions. But he couldn't hear me. All right, now I can tell you something that I usually try not to say. Haven't I warned you? Didn't I tell you from the beginning? I would tell him now, but probably he wouldn't accept anyway. So what happened? The Ukrainian protests in 2014 were very huge, right? Passionate, and a lot of people there totally sincere. But what were the declared goals? They wanted, first of all, it was anti-corruption protest because the existing at that time government was called very, very corrupt, and people really hated that. And they were actually right. It was corrupt. Well, all Ukrainian governments are very corrupt. That's no doubt about it. Then it was for European integration. They wanted to join European Union, and supposedly this supposedly pro-Russian president didn't do that for them, and that was the ground for their rebellion, so to speak. So, and finally they said, no, there will not be violence, there will be no anti-Russian sentiments there. It's all about European integration, and it's all about anti-corruption. These were the words I had from many pro-Maidan people back then. And I told them, people, no way you will be successful in your protest, because you say corruption, you can't fight corruption in the streets. If your government top to bottom, if your political system top to bottom is corrupt, it cannot be changed like this through some street protesting. uh, I will draw another like metaphor. Imagine you want, for example, you have you have flu, for example, you are sick, and then someone says, "Here is a hammer. Now kill the flu." Okay, you can break your silly head, but you will not kill the virus with a hammer. One is simply not designed to function against another. They are items from different kind of levels. You maybe kill a dog with a hammer, or I don't know, or your neighbor, but you can't kill virus with this tool. It just doesn't happen. So street protests never ever succeeded in fighting corruption. It's simply not possible to do. Yes, you can overthrow your president or your some government official, but that's only to install some other corrupted government official. You don't have any other options here on the table. So that was totally impossible, not because I wanted or my opinion, it's my opinion. It's simply impossible on axiomatic level. Okay, another claim, we want to join European Union. Well, in the state of Ukrainian economics and all the bearing all the factors together and what European Union presented at that time, it wasn't possible as well. Just no way. I mean, you can want it, but it's not possible. Not to mention that the claims or requirements of the European Union, economic and political, to Ukraine were absolutely totally unacceptably destructive for this country. They had to basically give up everything in order to only climb European integration. They had to give up their sovereignty. They had to close their agricultural complex and a lot of enterprises, and Ukraine was a very industrial country as well as an agricultural superpower. Well, potentially, it didn't happen. And they had to open their markets to European products, and they had to sever all their connections with Russia. But naturally, Ukraine and Russia were the closest partners, and their economic and industrial production systems, let's say, have been deeply integrated. So it's just a silly move, like a suicidal move. So they demanded that. And of course, I also will understand that European Union doesn't want another 40 million nation in their borders, nation that is basically unsustainable, nation that would go probably all like one searching for jobs in Europe. I, as a European Union citizen, don't want Ukrainians here. I don't want you, if there are any Ukrainians in my cozy European Union. Do I want our lovely Germany to turn into some sort of Eastern European province, like in no time when you guys arrive here in huge numbers? No way. And I think European populations would also rebel in their turns if their governments decided to accept this country. I mean, no, I totally. I mean, it's a bit of a sarcastic comment here, but let's face the reality. Accepting in your kind of economic system a massive population from a country that has significantly lower economical, how to say, standard of living, and economic situation is disastrous, is also, it's like swallowing a poisonous, I don't know, fruit or something. It would have been very bad for the European economy. They wouldn't do that. They only want to exploit, but they don't want to bear the aftermaths of this. political decision. All in all, it was clear that the declared goals will not be met. It was clear as the day, and yet they did it. And the third thing about the violence, it was also very clear that once they had these protests that didn't dissolve, that stay active for months there in this confrontation between government, police, riot police, and the people, and especially once we started seeing European and American politicians visiting and all the massive support from the so-called civilized world to the protest, it was very clear what will happen next. Of course, the bloody provocation. Of course, blood needs to be, is the word shed again, splashed, in order to bring the protest into the new phase, into the violent phase, and to create this chaos, which have been done many times over, and the scenario is always the same, and it's super clear how it works. So populations are governed against the government forces, and then there need to be a sparkle to make a huge fire. And of course, it was also obvious and visible since the very early time that among these peaceful protests, there were also huge numbers of some violent morons, and also some absolutely military trained squads that acted behind the crowds and used the crowds as their, like what it's called, cannon fodder or cannon meat, it's called, or human shields. So in the front lines, you would see some very, very not clever, exalted women showing their children or bringing flowers and doing all that stuff. And then at the back, you will see the wolves, the real, these Nazi regimes that acted according to their scenarios and military style planning, and who knew what to do next. And of course, the blood was there, and of course, it was all very predictable. And someone like me, it's so funny. I'm not a political analyst. I'm just a guy. I'm sitting on a table somewhere far, far away. But I knew how it will unfold. It was totally predictable, and it happened exactly as I predicted, except one thing: it was much worse than I even could expect or imagine. And what we've got in the end, dear Ukraine, we have about 15,000 people dead in this war between Donetsk and Donbass region, eastern Ukraine, and main Ukrainian forces. It doesn't matter. I mean, not the subject of my talk today, who killed whom and in how many numbers, and even whether Russia participated. Even this is, I mean, I don't want to talk about it right now. It's another big talk. But there essentially, it's clear that we have a very big civil conflict with some other countries involved on every side of it, this way or another, and for this or another reasons. So a peaceful Ukraine, which didn't do very well, but at least people could live and had some future ahead, and everything was kind of in their hands, now turned into a military theater. Well, not all of it, luckily, but some part of it. Lots of people died. Territories have been lost. Crimea will never be Ukrainian again. And I bet Donetsk, Donbass will also never be Ukrainian again. It's lost for Ukraine. But it's only the beginning. There will be more losses. And the whole existence of Ukrainian state is a game, which is as such not a tragedy, not a big loss. I mean, it's appeared on the map only 30 years ago. Who cares? It appeared, now it can disappear. What is important is human lives, not the borders artificially drawn by some assholes, right? Well, in Ukraine, they don't even respect their father founders, people who created Ukraine. Lenin, Stalin, they hate them. But these are the people who, Russian Tsars, who created Ukraine. Ukraine is a myth. I mean, there was some prehistorical kind of history of whatever of that region. Well, every square meter of our planet has a long history, of course, and it hasn't been always Russia, and it hasn't been always Ukraine. It changed sides, and I mean the territory was very fluid of this region that could be roughly described as Ukraine. But I mean, in the last like couple hundred years, it was Russian Empire, then it was Soviet Union, and then it was peacefully given a chance for freedom, for being a sovereign state. If they won't manage, not a great deal. Maybe they're not mature enough to have own country, which probably I think is correct assessment. And it's not even an offensive; it's just reality. Anyway, it was a long one. Sidestep to say exactly this, that there can be many different opinions on what we are saying, but some opinions based on facts, and more importantly on deep understanding of the landscape, while other opinions are based on like thin air. You can have them, but I mean things just will not happen as you expect them because your picture of the world is wrong. And back to this idiom that I brought about stone house versus a straw hat. I built my picture of the world from entirely different materials from a lot of my opponents. They build their picture of the world from the latest publication from their favorite mainstream magazines. Would it be British The Guardian, I don't know, Daily Mail, Daily Telegraph, that in the last months particularly post like total insanity daily, like totally, like they went totally loose crazy. Before they maybe tried a bit, but now it's like, and I built when we have this like debates from someone from this kind of camp of audience, they say, and you are all like soaked in Russian propaganda, for example. Well, they assume that I do exactly the same, sit there on a, I don't know, Russian channel 1 television and build my opinion of the world based on that. That would give me still a much better, much more adequate picture of the world than what they have, because Russian narrative, Russian state, I know, government narrative in this period of history is much, much, much more adequate to reality than the Western one. So in the war of narrative, West is completely losing. And maybe that's why they scream so hysterically and try to push their bullshit onto everybody. But it's like total nonsense. Yes, Russian narratives and this, call it Russian propaganda, is like level up more adequate, or 10 levels up more adequate than what Western politicians say and what Western politicum produces to explain things. And to prove that, you can make an experiment. Just take take your time, take your favorite Western politician, like from this top league. We'll take, I don't know, Obama. He was arguably a very good speaker, and listen to his speech, listen to his like several speeches, how he explained what is America, what is American mission in the world, how he comments on foreign affairs. And then take Vladimir Putin or Sergei Lavrov and listen to them. If you don't have, if you don't understand Russian, find videos with subtitles and just listen. Yes, take your time. There are many, many Putin speeches out there, and you just compare whose words are more kind of reasonable and more, how to say, explain the situation better. You will make your opinion maybe based on just that one. However, that said, no, I don't build my opinion from the same straw, only Russian mates through, as most of my Western colleagues do here. I actually try not to read newspapers and watch this stuff at all. The only exception is direct speech by key politicians. This is important, but on not everything they say, but I mean the speeches like on some fundamental problems. Once in a while, they produce something really substantial. This is important, and I do listen to that. But this is already a principally different kind of fish from the articles in newspapers. It's not like as Putin said, it just his speech, and he said he maybe talked for 1 hour, not for 2 minutes, and he explained the problem in a very, very deep and kind of big, detailed way. So yes, you want to hear that, of course, but there is more to it. So what makes your picture of the world potentially very adequate and well grounded? History. Literally each and every episode of this modern politics that we are discussing, and which is usually a trigger to having such conversation. Because why are we talking at all? Because there is, like, I don't know, 100,000 Russian troops amassed at the border of Ukraine, for example. That's why we talk about it. Or because America sent their, I don't know, 8,000 or 2,000 Marines to Eastern Europe, whatever. So this is why we talk about it initially. However, every problem, every info case has very deep roots. They don't do it for no reason, and there is always a prehistory. There is, for example, a conflict. It has sides, and it's important to write down every side of a conflict and try to understand who are in this conflict. There is a map. Map is a mighty, super important document that cannot be faked. Some little quick maps can be faked, but generally just open Google Earth, find Russia, find Ukraine, find the United States of America, measure the distance from America to Ukraine and from Russia to Ukraine. Maybe that will give you some hints. You can also look up maps about NATO expansion. And this is one very big topic these days. And you can see how NATO expanded towards Russian borders. You will see American military bases. It's also some maps. I don't know how accurate they are. It doesn't matter, but roughly nobody argues that there are something between 8,000, maybe 800, maybe 1,000 US bases in the world. And I heard some US general who said, we don't know how many bases we have. Because, well, some of them are like bases. Bases, they're probably, yes, on the list, but there are also different smaller points of concentration of forces and support, which are countless. It's really hard to say how many of them are there. So, and then you can check what is the Russian presence outside Russia. It's very limited. I mean, military presence. You can compare military budgets of these leading countries, and that should tell you a little bit about who has to be, for example, concerned about their security more and who probably should be concerned less. It's very simple. Then you need to, of course, learn the history. If you don't care about Ukraine and Ukrainians and everything, it's totally fine. I guess, well, before you even, well, maybe you listen to this video, maybe because you are interested in this subject. But frankly speaking, not every war is our war. And before you even open your mouth to say something, maybe you should ask yourself, do I care at all? I mean, there have been so many war conflicts somewhere far away, and we don't get much information about it. We don't know who are these people, and it's really hard to make any judgment because it's such detached from us. Of course, in the modern era, the world has shrunk a lot because of all these info technologies. Videos travel across the globe in no time. Like, you can instantly see what's going on very remotely if you wish, but it's still far too much for us to keep in mind, like, the whole picture of this global kitchen where something is happening everywhere, every minute. So you can't observe it all. So you cherry pick something that somehow resonates with you. Okay, I've been there on holidays and now they're on fire, so I want to check out what's going on. I lived there, I have friends there. Maybe these are my connections, but okay, there I know nobody, and basically I kind of care as a human, but honestly, I don't care enough to uh, start even Googling or check Wikipedia who are these people and what's going on there. So if you don't care about Ukraine, it's totally fine, I can imagine. But if you do, you want to, of course, uh, get a little bit of education about this piece of land, what has been there, and how it's developed, and particularly about this recent conflict, which didn't start like last month. It started already. Um, it has very deep roots. It has very deep roots. Yes. So of course, there is also economics. Of course, there is also philosophy and general ideas of humanity and of how it functions and who wants what. Uh, I, when I try to understand what's going on, like the conflict, who is doing what, I try to understand the motivation of sides as well. This is a very important one. You know, in these classical detective stories, if you have read novels by Agatha Christie or George Simenon. Um, this is a very good classical detective, like Commissar Maigret series, for example, by George Simenon. Agatha Christie, I don't know, her Miss Marple. You always remember that investigator is trying to understand the possible motive of a crime. Motivation is provides so many keys. Like, well, anybody can kill Mr. X, for example, but why would they do this? Like, did I kill Mr. X? Well, I don't even know him. I don't care about him. Of course, it makes totally no sense. Did, I don't know, Mr. Z kill Mr. X? Oh, this is highly likely because they, for example, couldn't share their girlfriend. I don't know, something like they had like a rivalry and they had lots of conflicts, and everybody knows that they had conflicts. So finally, probably could break into a violent clash between them. So you need to find motivation behind each action. Of course, people and countries, in a way, like, people do not act without any motives. Then you also want to listen to the official motivation, because every action has some explanation usually. For example, US State Department explains why they are helping Ukraine, and Russian foreign ministry also explains what is their position to Ukraine and why they have to be involved this way or another, and where are the red lines, so to speak. But you need to hear this official explanation and then make up your own idea, and then see how the official ones match your own perception. And then also, as the situation unfolds, you can see how the official narrative matches what really happens on the ground, which you can track through, even through the news. So, for example, if someone says we want peace and sends more troops to the region, maybe their drive for peace is not all that convincing, maybe. I don't know. So you need to explore it. This kind of ideas, so the maps, the history, long-term trends, looking for historical patterns. For example, certain things have been repeatedly happening in the last few decades, repeatedly, or even in a longer period of time. And you can see that, oh, this episode is exactly like that episode, or very similar to it. And I don't know, this country, has it ever attacked, I don't know, has Russia ever attacked West? Europe? No. Have European countries attacked Russia? Yes, like dozens of times, like constantly, every few decades. That's interesting, by the way. Um, so maybe this is just another one attempt. Of course, they always try to justify these actions, to explain them to their populations. So once your house is built of some solid material, such as, again, I will repeat, maps, history, long-term tendencies and patterns, economic wins, gains and losses and risks, maybe. You need to at least think about it in terms of economic is important. Someone always is trying to make money. Uh, uh, Motivation, I don't know, shall we call it some psychology of the conflict, uh, your personal impression of key figures. You really need to know who are the sides of the conflicts and what kind of, do you can you trust them? You can, well, you don't know these people personally, but you can make your impression because a lot of materials are out there available to you. For example, here in Germany, people, for the most part, had very good opinion of the Chancellor and Angela Merkel. And I can imagine why, because they heard a lot of her speaking. They kind of uh, tracked her career for years. She has been very long in politics and she's well known. She's kind of transparent in a way. So despite some flaws and some fails, generally she was respected in her post. Now she left, she's around, but she left the post, right? So I would say, yeah, it's a good credit. I mean, I understand that. I support that as well. Like, I mean, it's a valid factor that somehow increases your trust in a politician. Or this current guy Scholz, uh, he is also, no, he's not. He was a Burgmeister of Hamburg at some point before, and he left like good memory of him here. So people hold him in good regard mostly. That's good. I mean, it's valid. Of course, it's not like a guarantee that his politics is perfect or anything, but at least you can think in terms of this is a decent person generally. Yeah. That's about it. I guess I will wrap it up here. So this talk is not really about the particularities of politics. It's not about trying to understand what exactly happening now, but more about how we address it, uh, how we approach these problems that we are facing. Yeah, right. And I guess I will add something why I'm pushing this. Well, I mean, pushing is a bad word because I'm too lazy. I don't do too many videos or anything. Just once in a while I come to this and I talk mostly for my friends, to my friends about it. Why? Because I realize that personally I can't change the ways of history. I'm just a little someone. But even people who put huge effort into it, who are hanging on social net, who are journalists, let's say, even they probably can't change the way of history like single-handedly. It's too massive, too many people and forces are involved. You can't expect to turn this wheel of destiny, of the mankind single-handedly or as a group even of people. I don't think it works like this. However, it's in our power, and I imagine it is our duty as citizens to oppose evil whenever we see it and not let it win. Also, it's our duty to preserve our sanity and our decency. And it's up to us if we choose to participate in something nasty or we stay away from it. Here in Germany, oh my goodness, it's like a land of metaphors. I love it here. I mean, fascism gave us a really important lesson, so many lessons. And one of them, and fascism is very easy to quote and kind of safe because everybody in the room agreed it's really bad. It's like our no grads temperature, like absolute no. It's like absolute evil that was agreed upon by all civilized world, so to speak. And that's why it's also safe to quote, because if you take someone else, you would say, oh, Americans drop atomic bombs on Japan. And Americans would say, who is talking here? You Stalinist? Stalin killed millions in gulags. And so it goes. And there are Chinese with their Mao. And well, the truth is every nation has and every country has disgusting pages in their history, and very dark pages and very horrible crimes have been committed everywhere, big or small, like in our little Lithuania, which is kind of away from the spotlights, but 200,000 of Jews and countless Soviet military captives were executed there, exterminated there, and a lot of them were killed by locals. This is not a very popular narrative, but well, yes. But everyone is in the business, and Ukraine that we mentioned actively collaborated with Nazis, as well as another part of Ukraine actively fought against Nazis. So it can be complicated, but every nation has its dark pages. However, in case of Germany, back to it, it was German crimes have been punished by international laws. Fascism was defeated in the war and then judged and sentenced by the international tribunal in Nuremberg. And this is particularly important that everybody agreed it's evil. That's why, and Germans agreed, and they are grateful that they have been liberated from the evil of fascism. So, in fact, Germany wasn't defeated in war, it was liberated from their homegrown evil. And now look at the beautiful country and beautiful people. I mean, it's great. But I mean, it's also very good that there is such an example, which is kind of your sample of evil that you can quote and no one would object it. But the tricky part with this evil is that at that time it was very popular. So fascism enjoyed huge popular support from the population. And this is perhaps this tragic page, the most tragic and kind of shameful maybe for German. But don't worry, my German friends. It's again, there's nothing unique about it. You are just scapegoated in that sense because, well, all Europe was fascist, by the way. France, Italy, Spain, Finland, I don't know, all the Scandinavian countries, all these so-called neutral countries like Switzerland, I don't know, they all were Nazi. Yes, so it's I mean nothing unique for Germany. And yes, in Russia we had some other kind of very bad evils as well. So I mean, no, Americans, I'm not even talking about it. What is important, we don't want to be there again. Millions of people who were kind of good, well, not even without quotes, they were good in conventional terms, but they kind of supported, and some are quite passionately supported Nazism. And they did, because they didn't know, they wouldn't do that. They just didn't know it's so it's bad. They thought it's good. I guess Hitler knew how to convince, and his propaganda machine knew how to convince the population that they're a force for good. That's the trick of it. And this is what can return today. I think it's partly here already, this kind of situation. Lots of good people support very evil politicians. And this makes me suffer because I don't hope to change the history, as I said, but I want to grab my friends for their, I don't know, like here, shake them and scream into their faces, wake up, people, wake up, mate. Who are you kind of supporting? Who are you? Who Tony Blair, who was like the main force behind British American NATO invasion into Iraq that costed like over a million lives. Well, so many people were killed that nobody even knows how many. Maybe million, maybe 1,055,068 people. Well, nobody can tell how many. Just countless number of people, estimated as million roughly, were killed by UK, US, NATO coalition in Iraq, and nobody was even hanged for it, nobody was sentenced. And these politicians remained in higher regard and respect. Tony Blair recently received knighthood from the Queen, and I'm sure a lot of people voted for him. He was a popular, well, he won in the elections, he was elected in Britain, and I imagine that a lot of my British friends voted for this person, just like a lot of Germans supported Hitler. I mean, I see no difference. I see no difference. And in America, they vote for this. I don't even know how to describe it, because Americans' crimes are so huge and so obvious to anybody who opens their eyes and sees. But they're all in their offices with a mandate, with approval from their citizens. This is bad. And if we have this final confrontation, it can end up just like it ended up for the Third Reich. Before the Nuremberg was something else. I walk in the streets of Hamburg and see these vast empty spaces everywhere. It all was beautiful medieval European city before, but after the war, it was bombed to trash, to rumbles, and countless thousands of people were killed here. They burned alive in this firestorm bombing committed by British aviation in 1943, I believe. Operation Hamora. Hamburg was called European Hiroshima. Well, Dresden is known, but Dresden was much smaller city. Yes, it was even more destroyed, and there were a lot of other German towns destroyed, and most of people died. And probably before they died, they thought, for what? I mean, the God, what is it all for? I mean, these bombs falling from the sky and killing everything you love. This is what for? For your stupid choices, for your lazy minds, because you let it happen, because you let your country to commit terrible crimes about the humanity, and then there was payback. And it might happen again. Maybe Germany is careful. I think Germany is one of the most sane countries in Europe right now, namely because they learned the lesson here. They're very careful and I like it so much. I mean, they are important in this coalition of NATO countries, but they try to stay away at least from direct sending troops somewhere, things like that, not to be directly involved in criminal activities of their partners. But of course, it's all very complex, but I would say, America, be careful. Americans, be careful. Wake up. Try to understand that it cannot last forever, that you don't care and do anything in the world. You will be stopped and you will suffer next, maybe. So, but better not to bring it that far, better to somehow, I don't know. And at the very least, I brought these Nazis. There was this photo, it's kind of viral, about a crowd of people, black and white old photo from Germany, a crowd of people, and everybody's giving this Nazi salute, and one person is probably like standing like this, one in the crowd who doesn't salute. And this photo is often goes with this kind of made the meme basically about how yes, everybody do this, but I'm not in, You start from yourself. Oppose the war, oppose militarism, oppose this mindless expansionism, oppose fascism. That's my message, kind of. So, my friend asked me, so what can we do? I don't know. It's important to realize, and then you can think of your strategies. Maybe you look for a political party that opposes war and support it. Maybe you support some organizations or even participate. Maybe you go on the strike, on demonstration for peace. Or maybe you don't do anything because, well, we live our daily lives and we're busy with that. Maybe you just talk to your friends about it once in a while and try to generally, no, at least you are not in this. Maybe, I don't know if the God is there and if there is anything afterlife, but maybe it will count to you somehow. I hope sometimes that there is some divine justice for all of us, and that this kind of things make a difference. Like, yeah. Yes, that's all. Thank you for your attention. Stay healthy, as they say, and really think for yourself. Think, question narrative, think, and try not to be, this passive supporter of some really, really nasty things. Because, yes, I believe the burden of responsibility is on all of us. Some of this, maybe a little microscopic part of this evil, is your evil. It's your lazy mind, and it's your kind of, well, your acceptance of the criminal status quo. You need to do better, people. You care to be good citizens, so this is how you improve. I'm giving you keys. Question everything, think for yourself, and oppose all the nasty stuff. And you can never vote for politicians who do commit evil things. Okay, bye. Ciao.